I am live and Candy's jumping all over me. Hi, everyone. It's Gordon Causey, as always is. Thank you for tuning in. She's rattling the table and shaking my coffee. Thankfully, it's only half empty. It is, let's see, it's the 11th of December for now. Get off me. Binary speaking, yes, is here. And so, Candy, I'll tell you something. If you want a calm dog, a dog that's is not full of energy, do not get a border collie. But if you love energy, oh my goodness, yes. All right, and everyone, Binary knows, everyone else will know what is happening. I start every video off giving her a treat, and this is a bacon treat, which are her absolute favorite. They give off an aroma. See me smelling it. It does smell like bacon, although it's a doggy treat. I wouldn't touch it. Shake a paw, lay down, speak. All right. Go. All right. Candy has been looked after. I apologize for the lateness of my stream. Welcome to my, as I often say, I always call this my miserable, pathetic little YouTube station with no production values, no fancy software, no graphics, nothing. Just bare bones, basic, just an old 58-year-old Christian, Canadian, white, male, injecting his voice into the public discourse, throwing my thoughts, views, and opinions out into the digital world. And normally my streams, I try to get them sometime before 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, before 11 p.m. my time. Sometimes 9:15, 9:30, sometimes 10:30, 10:45, but I aim to start them before 11 p.m. Tonight, I crashed. I had dinner. I had some things I wanted to say, continuing on this whole Billy Carson theme, but branching away from them, using them as kind of a launching pad, if you will, because I have a lot of thoughts on this matter. But I've just been working a lot of hours. Interestingly enough, Binary Speaking, who is here, is friends with me on Facebook, and she sent me a video by a channel I already watch. What do you meme is the name of the station, and I'm gonna give it a Siskel and Ebert thumbs up for those of us old enough to remember that reference. I'll give it 2 thumbs up. That was an old 80s, 90s TV show with 2 Chicago movie critics who would sit down in the balcony and then review the latest films that had come out, going all the way back to Star Wars. So they were around even in the 70s. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. And they would, at the end, they would say, 2 thumbs, either 1 thumb up, 1 thumb is down, 2 thumbs down, 2 thumbs up. And I'm going to give What Do You Meme 2 thumbs up. The station, if you want to check it out, What Do is spelt, it's not spelt What Do You Meme, being a little cute. The word What Do is WHADDO. And then the word you, and then the word meme, M-E-M-E. What do you meme? It's cute. And he's got the content. He's fully monetized, takes advertisers, but it's a very good station. I'm not even familiar with the gentleman's name. I don't care. What I care most about is content. And his content and his commentary are top notch. And he approaches things from a thoroughly Christian perspective, in my view. Anyway, let me take a sip of my coffee. So far, I notice I have a number of people watching. Binary is filling up the live chat, and she's given me permission to use her first name, Rachel. Very good. And she said he posted a new one today on Billy Carson again, and she's written the name of his station down. What do you mean? So that's good. I could do the same thing, but I didn't. Thank you, Binary. And I watched probably, he put out about a 20-minute video today, dropped today. I watched the first 10 minutes or so. He's preaching to the choir with me, meaning it's a sounding board for what I already believe anyway. So I only watched about half. I did learn a couple of things from it. Because what has happened in the wake of this in the last 2-3 days, Billy Carson has posted a 3+ hour long video defending himself more or less, and touting himself as the Joel Osteen of the New Age religious movement, talking about how I live in a mansion and we have a cook and I travel all around the world and I have so many vehicles and I'm so rich and I'm so wealthy and I don't care if I win this lawsuit or not. He said in this video, I don't care if I win or not, just so long as it costs them money, as long as, which makes it what I refer to as a nuisance. I think it can be framed potentially as a nuisance lawsuit. Well, I know there's no basis for this. I agreed to go and debate this guy, and the facts that I present and have been presenting for months or years about this Sinai Bible and this Gospel of Barnabas, or the Gospel of Barabbas, I forget which one. There are so many what I will call pseudo-religious texts out in the world that there's just too many pseudo-religious texts. But people grab hold of these, sometimes forgeries, and they accept them as gospel truth. And the reason they do that is because it caters to their preconceived bias notions. And I want to get into that, but before I do, I've got XVV writing probably a catfish. I'm not overly familiar with that term catfish, but I think it speaks to and you can correct me if I'm wrong, XVV. When you go to entice someone online, and so it sets a honey trap. Honeypot trap is another term. This idea of an ambush. And to me, whether it was an ambush or not, and I don't think it was, but even if it was, the fact is, Billy Carson, his facts, what he believed to be facts, were exposed as lies. And how did I title this? I said, do facts matter? And what are facts? It's a little hard. I haven't given this an exhaustive amount of thought. I'm a busy guy. And I talked about this in my last video. Most people, we don't have the time to do a master's level, PhD level research thesis into all our facts and opinions. Or on all our opinions, everyone has their opinion. A lot of people have their opinion on Christianity, but they haven't got the time to research it fully. And so what they'll do is, if they're sufficiently motivated to learn about the Christian faith, either from the perspective of one who's inclined to believe or from the perspective of one who's inclined to not believe, then what they will do is they will source out people who will inform them and cater to their bias and give them the information that supports their bias. I'm going to give an example, but let me read this, what's being written. And I have a tendency to have thoughts and not expound on them because I start going in a different direction. So I'm going to start writing so I remember what I want to talk about. I've got Plan D writing, ha ha ha. A man went down, a grifter, all in flames, got caught saying false claims. Billy Zigzag was his name. It's one thought I had with respect to his name, Billy. Billy is a name. If I was this gentleman, I would go with, I would assume he was on his birth certificate, it says William. Maybe not. But if it does, I would go with the moniker William over Billy. Because Billy, I had a friend, Billy Corney. I just said, as 50 plus years ago now. And Billy is a name that little kids have, Billy. And then when they enter their adult years, they become Bill or William, unless they're a famous athlete. Goalie, Battling Billy Smith of the New York Islanders. If you're in the realm of sports, then the name Billy, it works. Gordie Howe, Dougie Gilmore, Billy. Billy Martin was the famous, I think he was a second baseman and then later a famous manager for the New York Yankees and Oakland Athletics. Billy Bean, Moneyball. Billy is if you're in the realm of sports is a game that kids play. Otherwise, William sounds far more mature, far more, it inspires more respect than Billy. At any rate, just reading on. Plan D says that William is in fact his real name. Okay, so his full name is William according to Plan D. And where I'm talking about facts matter is because Plan D has just come on to a random, pretty much Joe Nobody podcast or YouTube channel, and has put up what he knows as a fact, but I don't know it. And I'm not sufficiently motivated to go and check out birth records to find out what is written on this Billy Carson's, but I'm going to take you at your word. William is his real name. I figure there's a 70-80% chance. XVV was joking with respect to my earlier comment. Plan D says so true. Binary Speaking says that her boyfriend's name is William, goes by Bill or Babe. You won't catch me calling him Babe unless he hits a home run almost every other at bat in a baseball league. Then on the baseball field, I might call him Babe, as in Babe Ruth. I have Cielo, I'm going to pronounce it that way, Cielo Azul, saying that Billy, because he was, past tense of the verb, charismatic. And he is a charismatic figure. I spoke to this yesterday, or my last video, I guess it was 2 nights ago, how his manner of speaking lends credibility because his intonation and his demeanor is like, I don't care if you believe me or not. So, look it up. That's one of his, what little I've caught of him, that's one of his favorite things to say. Yeah, it's in the Sinai Bible. Look it up. Man, you don't want to believe me? Fine. I don't care. This is the truth. It sounds compelling because of the manner in which he's able to present it. And that speaks to what Cielo Azul is saying in terms of his charisma. Charisma is something that attracts people to you. If I'm charismatic, people are attracted to me because of my charisma. XVB is writing cap. I don't know what that means. And Cielo says, and because no one checks on his credentials or does research on him. To be entirely frank, to be entirely honest, I don't care about his credentials. What I care about are the facts. Because whether you have the ability to speak truth is divorced from one's level of education. A guy who did not graduate high school can speak more truth than someone with a master's or a PhD or an MBA. A person with what happened, how many of us, and I'm guilty, how many people believed the origin story of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that it came from a wet market in Wuhan, China, that it jumped from a bat to a human? How many believe that story? Because it came from authoritative, highly educated sources. Guilty. I believed it right at the beginning. I figured it made sense to me. I read the article in Nature magazine that Anthony Fauci was so thrilled about. He wrote in his emails how thrilled he was about the promotion of this narrative that it jumped from a bat to a human, from an animal reservoir. I bought it. Guilty. I heard authoritative, highly educated sources, Nature magazine, a top-notch scientific publication, they put out a lie. And because of the source, and I read the article, and it made sense to me. It actually spoke to me, that stupid article, because the way it describes SARS-CoV-2 jumping from the bat to the human is it said that bats were being held in small cages in this wet market, and that they were under a high degree of stress. And when animals are under high degrees of stress, that a disease, sometimes latent diseases, will express themselves. And they use the example of cold sores. And they said, and speaking as one who gets cold sores, or I haven't had them for years, but I used to get them, especially when I was a teenager in public school or in high school. I got them a lot as a child. And they would happen during times in my life when I was stressed. And it was annoying as all get out, because my mother was a registered nurse, and I could not hide the fact that I was stressed out when you're 12, 13, 15, 16. And your mom says, "What's bothering you?" Typical teenage response, "Nothing." And she would know because I had a tell on my face. And they said, "This is the virus, which is herpes simplex 1, not to be confused with the sexually transmitted disease herpes simplex 2. At times of stress, it expresses itself and then it can jump." And because they used an example with which I was intimately firsthand experience familiar, I bought the narrative. I still, for what it's worth, March 18th on 2020, on my Facebook profile and in one other forum I participated in back then, I published a screed saying lockdown is the dumbest, stupidest, craziest thing in the world, because you can't stop a virus. No matter what we do, it's going to spread. And my opinion at the time, I thought Sweden got things right. I thought, Sweden didn't mandate anything. They had some recommendations. They did mandate, I think they limited outdoor gatherings to 50. Canada, a kid shooting basketball on his own outside his house was fined hundreds of dollars for simply being outside. Let me read what's being said. Binary is writing, he claims he's a famous historian on ancient manuscripts. Denied resurrection of Jesus Christ, says manuscripts prove his point. And the thing is, you can be a historian without having a degree in a master's level, PhD level, or even a bachelor's in history. You can still be a historian. You can still read. You can, if you're so inclined, you can go and monitor classes at a university or a college, and monitor. Monitor means you're there watching. You can take in the material. You're just not going to get a credit for that course toward a degree. So you can have the knowledge. And I would remind everyone that Jesus's own disciples, Jesus did not go out and seek out the intelligentsia of his day. He did not go if he wanted the most erudite individuals in Judean society, in Galilean society, he would have gone to the scribes. He would have gone to the schools that the Pharisees attended for his followers. Who did he go to? He went to simple fishermen. I will make you fishers of men. And I was making the point about how people believe things if it caters to your bias, and it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. And the example I was going to give was there is a fake article purported to have been put out by People magazine with Donald Trump before 2016, before he ran for president, when there was a lot of speculation that he might run. And he was asked in this fake article whether or not, if he was to run, would you run as a Democrat or would you run as a Republican? And it gets shared a lot in screen captures. You can't get a source on it because it was never published. It's a fake, digitally created screen capture of a People magazine article that was never written. And what Donald Trump says in this fake article is, well, if I was to run, I would probably run as a Republican because Republicans are brain dead stupid. They'd be far easier to fool, manipulate, trick. That kind of wordage. I don't remember it precisely. And it's fake. He never said it. And those with a pejorative view of Republicans and who think people who genuinely believe that Republicans are stupid, ignorant, uneducated, blah, 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 all these negative things, they love sharing that out. And you point out to them, well, it's fake, and they don't care because it's speaking the truth. That, that's true about Republicans. Republicans are everything it says in this fake quote. We live in such a complicated world, and things are getting worse, more complicated, because of, now we had CGI before. We have deep fakes before. Now we've added in the component of AI, which you can take an image of this Billy Carson or this Wes Huff, the guy from Toronto who destroyed him. And you could create now with AI, deep fake technology, you could create a video of Wes Huff admitting that, well, the Sinai Bible is real. I just came across a copy, blah, blah, blah. And I apologize to Billy Carson. You could do that. There's so much you can do in today's world. Binary writes that Billy then says he made a mistake, meant the gospel of Barnabas. I said in my video of a couple nights ago, Barabbas. Barabbas was the name of the thief, or rather the known criminal who was released instead of Jesus when at the Passion, when Pilate turned to the crowd and said, who shall I release? Jesus, King of the Jews, or Barabbas? And the crowd said, release Barabbas. So Barnabas, Barabbas, they're close. Sharunian's here. Where's Whale Oil Beef and Danny's? See some ghosted NFT accounts. I don't even know what NFT stands for. Too many acronyms. And about binary saying is that the Barnabas, this gospel that this guy touted, and this is what Wes Huff mentioned in the debate, is that the earliest copies we have of it are from the 1500s, 14th century, and that it quotes, paraphrases, I would say plagiarizes Dante's Inferno. And he gives a lot of other scholarly debate. Now, the thing is, because binary, what Wes Huff said caters to our bias. We are professing Christians. Many here probably will be, and I pray you are. And if you're not, please stick around. Maybe I can give you reason to, if not to accept Jesus, at least to investigate it further. Anyway, I am not, the one thing I did do is I did on my own go up and look up the Codex Sinaiticus, and apparently it goes by a few different names, at least two other names. It's not just referred to as the Codex Sinaiticus. And it is according to everything that I am able to read, it's exactly what Wes Hupp represented it to be. A early Greek, I think Coptic Greek translation, one of the earliest, where everything was codified together into somewhat akin to what we would call book form today, as opposed to being on scrolls. So many of the earlier documents that we have from the 2nd and 3rd centuries are merely fragments of the Gospel of John, fragments of Paul's letter to this church or that church, fragments of Mark. We don't have the entire papyrus, and that's, whereas the Codex Sinaiticus is a very early, from the years 400 or 500, very early, which would have been copied from earlier material, maybe from that, some of these very papyrus sheets that we have little scraps of. The author, the ones who were transcribing on and creating the Codex Sinaiticus, they had the entire gospel. Anyway, Kath is here saying, hi to everyone. I've got Plan D saying Billy Zigzag on his GIA platform, GIA TV. I'm not familiar with GIA TV. And as I mentioned a couple days ago, I'd never heard of Billy Carson because he doesn't cater to my point of view. But there is another point I wanted to get onto about why a voice like Billy Carson is popular, why people gravitate to his voice, why putting out, even when you put out nonsense, why people are so willing to believe it. And it's because ultimately, for a lot of people, facts don't matter, because all that matters is that you present things that cater to my bias. So long as a famous example would be what are referred to as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Those who hate Israel, Jews, and all things Jewish love to point to the Protocols of the Elders of Zion as evidence, proof, and justification for their hatred for Israel, Jews, and all things Jewish. Because this phony document basically paints Jews as being the masters of the universe, pulling all the strings. And it takes a world that is seemingly chaotic and it gives it order. Okay, now I understand. And so, and it doesn't, there's nothing you can say to anyone who's deep down that conspiracy theory. There is no one, no matter what evidence, proof, documentation you provide to show and debunk these fraudulent protocols of the Elders of Zion, they won't believe it anyway, because it supports their view that Jews are evil and control the world. Let me read on. Binary is giving a summary of what's going on. I think most will be familiar. And his 3+ hour long video. He says he has credibility because he's rich. To me, he's the Joel Osteen, who's a famous preacher, preaches what is called the prosperity gospel, kind of takes this whole law of attraction thing and tries to blend it into Christianity, and lives in an opulent lifestyle, private jet, and all kinds of things. Kenneth Copeland is another. There are a lot of voices out there that you have to be circumspect, careful, discerning with every voice, and that includes my own. Even though I'm, a dressed down, don't believe me just because you say, well, this guy's not, he's not asking for money, and he's very low key and just very down to earth. Maybe, I believe him. Don't even believe me based on that. Uh, for Christians, we've got to pray on everything. Anything important. I mean, not going to pray over whether I want to have white or brown toast or scrambled or once over easy. You don't have to pray over every decision. Not everything is important, but when things are important, when you have someone trying to win your heart, soul, and mind, pray. I'm going to read, and then I want to talk about some personal life experience that might surprise some here. Some might be surprised if you've been watching this channel a while. I am an unapologetic professing Christian. However, that was not always the case. I've shared on here before my testimony that I gave in August of 2021, back when we were supposed to be in lockdown. And my road back onto the Christian path has been long, and it's continuing. And I don't proclaim or profess that I've got everything right. I want to make that abundantly clear. I'm not saying that I have everything 100% right. I'm just aiming, striving, pointing myself in what I getting my feet back on the path. And that happened for me around the age of 40. My testimony is that of what is called a prodigal son, because I was brought up going to church. I was brought up reading the Bible. I don't have the copy of it here now, but I have a copy of English Standard Revised Bible that was given to me by the church I attended, the Community Church of Glen Rock. When I was 8 years of age and going into grade 2, they would present you with a Bible. And I got that Bible in September of 1974. So it's a 50-year-old Bible now. And it is, I was thinking about it today as I was reading from it. I'm reading 2 Kings right now. Is how, what if it got lost? What if it got stolen? I keep it in my vehicle parked. And then at lunchtime, I go out to my car and I get it, and I don't lock the car. There's nothing valuable in there. And while that is precious to me, might someone steal it? And I was just thinking, what if someone did steal it? Well, my faith doesn't revolve around that book. It revolves around the words in that book, and the words in that book are available pervasively. I have another copy here. I have another copy over there. I've got another copy on my bookshelf over there. And I probably have a couple of my old Army Bibles here in CAD-PAT style cover. Anyway, I'm just going to read what's being said. Binary's saying hi to everyone. Kath writes, I watched a video by Isaiah Robin or Robin or whatever today, and he exposed Billy Carson and his wife. And Plan D is writing how Billy likes to talk about all the needful things in his wackadoo life. And Binary writes, facts don't matter, feelings do. And she says that is false. What matters? True. Facts. Is this true or false? Facts don't matter, feelings do. She's saying that is false. And it is, but that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where feelings supersede facts. That is what the culture teaches, is that feelings supersede facts. The most obvious example is around gender. Objective biological reality takes a back seat to how one feels. Well, your XY, you have testicles, a penis, and all the physical attributes, the musculature and the pelvis and everything. You are a male. But I don't feel like a male. I feel like a woman. Well, in that case, in today, the culture tells us that that is a woman. And the culture further states that I choose to identify as the gender to which I was born. I am The culture says I am cisgendered, CIS. And I'm like, no, I am not cisgendered because gender is not a choice. I did not pick my gender. Let me read on. Binary writes, faith in Jesus Christ matters, and it does. And the enemy has been at work for coming up on 2,000 years now, trying to push the culture away from the saving message, the salvation message that is contained in the Bible. And I'm just going to read up, and then I'm going to faith in Jesus Christ matters. Billy must suffer for every dollar. That's plan D. XVB says, I don't even pay attention to most of these characters. I wasn't paying attention to him either. Well, I just got hit with this. All the, stations like my own. We're talking about Billy Huff, and I'm like, or not Billy Huff, Billy Carson. It's Billy Carson, Wes Huff. Combine the two. And then that was my introduction to this man. I'd never heard of him before. But I'm just in the vernacular of Billy Carson during his 3-hour video. I'm just a worker bee. I'm just a stupid, ignorant little worker bee. I don't live in a mansion like Billy Huff. I don't have a cook preparing my meals. I don't fly all around the world and hire private jets and et cetera, et cetera. His braggacious nature about I'm so rich and powerful and famous, and I'm going to file nuisance lawsuits against these 3 guys, and I don't even care if I win, just so long I'm that rich. I'm everything in a bag of chips. That's Billy Carson. And he tapped into something. There are a lot of people who gravitate toward a voice that denies Jesus Christ as Lord. There's a spirit at work here. Now I'm going to get into the religious. The spiritual. Religion is okay. There's nothing wrong with religion, provided it orients you toward the creator of all things. Religion in of itself is, so long as it's orienting you toward a relationship with Jesus Christ, religion is great. Unfortunately, what happens is religion becomes a means unto itself, and it becomes all about the religion and the rules, and the relationship takes a back seat. And it's always been that way. It was that way during Jesus's earthly ministry. That was who he railed against the Pharisees constantly, because there were rules and traditions that the Pharisees and the culture of the day followed, and it was an expectation that you would always, cleanliness was huge. It was a tradition. Because there's so many admonitions in the Bible about not eating of anything that is unclean. Well, if your hands got soiled with something that was quote unquote unclean, what if a pig had walked on the dirt, and then that pig dirt got onto your hands, and then you eat without washing your hands, and that pig dirt gets into your mouth? I'm simplifying it a bit, but that's where so many of the admonitions came. And from a religious point of view, when the Pharisees admonished Jesus for healing on the Sabbath, I can understand their point of view. You got to walk in the shoes of your enemy if you want to, understand. And what in the book of Numbers, a man, while the Jewish people, while the Hebrews, the Israelites, while they were wandering in the desert or the wilderness for 40 years. There's a passage in Numbers. I don't remember chapter and verse. You can look it up. Just put in Numbers. Man picks up sticks. And on the Sabbath day, a man went and gathered sticks. And he was brought before Moses and ultimately was stoned to death because he was doing work on the Sabbath. Now, critics of faith and critics of the Bible will say, look at that, a guy killed for picking up sticks. Now, the way I read it and my understanding of it, and you don't have to agree, is that God judges the heart. And the seventh day, Saturday, was set aside to be a Sabbath day to the Lord, and no work was to be done. And what was the heart of the man who was going and gathering sticks? Was he doing it in rebellion? Well, this is just stupid. We can't do any work. Oh, look at me. I'm picking up sticks and doing that to God, saying, I don't care about your rules. Was it in that respect? I would suspect that it was in something of that respect that he did it, as an open rebellion against the rules that had been prescribed as handed down to Moses. That's my belief. Had that man been gathering sticks to create a fire to warm someone who was freezing to death, then I think that would be a different matter. And that is when Jesus came along, he started healing people on the Sabbath. When Jesus, during his earthly ministry, he healed a man with a withered hand. He restored sight. By the pool, he healed a leper, and he did many of these things on the Sabbath. And the scribes and the Pharisees and the religious leaders would rebuke him. You're doing it on the Sabbath. It is not lawful according to the religion. Anyway, I love to digress and go all over the place. I've got someone I haven't seen before. Jeff, why not an easier name? Volkersdin. That's the way I'm going to say it. Pardon me if I got it, if I butchered it. He said, false evidence appearing real. FEAR, the acronym. And whether it's false or not, in today's culture, you're the judge of what is real or false. There's no objective reality anymore. We don't even know the difference between a male and a female. And so you can point something out to people and say, this Gospel of Barnabas, this Sinai Bible are not real. And it doesn't matter. It won't matter to them because they do not believe. And Jeff is writing, I followed Billy for 2 years and I should have done my research. Now I'm glad I am back with God. The good thing about this, the amazing thing about this is not that Billy Carson has been taken down. I pray that he himself will come to know the name above every other name. I pray that Billy Carson comes to Christ. I think he could be one of the most amazing voices. Prodigal testimonies are awesome, although I don't know if he could be determined as a prodigal. A prodigal is someone who is in the faith, walks away, and comes back. That's the definition of a prodigal, but look into that. Don't take my word. Don't trust me. If you care, if you think it's important, if you think I got it wrong, check. Anyway, but having a voice such as his coming on board, it's rehabilitating the Christian message. It's rehabilitating the person of Jesus Christ in our culture that has spent so much effort, time, and money in trying to push people away from the Christian message. The enemy has been at work for a long time, 2,000 plus years, trying to drive people away and to get them to think of the Bible as a bunch of inconsequential, superstitious nonsense that's only meant for ignorant people. And you're not ignorant. You're a smart person. You don't need to be with them. Don't be a Ned Flanders. There was a episode of The Simpsons, which I saw when it aired, or in and around when it aired, where in Springfield, a museum opens, and there's a traveling exposition about the origins of life, and it's expounding on evolution, this idea that we were single-celled organisms, then two, then three, or two, then four, then eight, then 16, this doubling, and then fish, and then fish crawled on the land, and then land eventually we evolved, mammals evolved from that everything started from single-celled organisms, and this evolutionary process. And Ned Flanders complains to the curator of the museum that, isn't there something for people of faith? Isn't there something for Christians? And the guy says, oh yeah, we got a display over there in the next room. And you go, oh, good. And he opens the door, and then they have, what happens is they are playing a song. I don't know who writes it. What a Fool Believes is a rock anthem, and a finger coming down from the clouds, and trees come up, and animals and plants, and Adam and Eve. And that's what the culture wants you to believe. The culture wants you to believe that life can spring from nothing, that you can just take the primordial soup, stir it up, and maybe some unknown ingredient existed billions of years ago that caused life to suddenly. This is the whole basis of Darwin's theory of evolution. His theory on the origins of species is that the initial genesis starting point was a primordial lifeless soup, and that single-celled organisms came into being. And and the thing is, going back to Louis Pasteur and many more, scientists have attempted to prove that Darwin is right. They've conducted all manner of experiments trying to prove that you can animate lifeless matter. And every experiment done has failed, which has led to the scientific conclusion that has yet to be refuted, that only life can create life, which says that there has to be a first mover. And I'm here to say, I'm going to state it as fact, whether or not you want to believe it or not, but this is factual for me, is that the first mover is, we use the term God, the force, Yahweh, I am, Lord, pick your term. Human language is so limiting. That entity, whatever name you want to put to it, there has to be a first mover, and that first mover has to exist outside of time, space, and matter. And we have science informing us with this Hadron Collider, in the CERN in Switzerland, where they're smashing atoms together, that there are far more than the 4 dimensions that we can perceive. There are infinitely, perhaps infinite, an infinite number of dimensions. And for what it's worth, while it doesn't use that language, the Bible speaks to this, the heavenly realms which are beyond the capacity of humanity to perceive. And, we do not fight battles of flesh and blood, but this is spiritual warfare in the heavenly realms, in the heavenly dimensions. There are 4 dimensions that human beings that we can perceive, and they are height, depth, width. That's where we get, so we have 3-dimensional figures, 3D. Those are the 3. And then the 4th dimension is one we can perceive intellectually, and that is time. So you have height, depth, width, and time. Those are the 4 dimensions, the 4, I'll call them known dimensions, tangible dimensions, measurable dimensions. But then there are theoretical physics postulates that there are 10, 15, potentially limitless. Let's read up, because the live chat is being filled, and I've got a Jesus 2 here, and that and Danny did show up, and whale oil beef is here. Oh, Okay, so I left off with Jeff saying that he followed him for 2 years and glad to be back with God. Stay on the path. It's not easy, Jeff. I would recommend you get into the Bible every single day. That's my advice. Take it for what it's worth. And I hope you found a good church because it helps to be in community, physical community with people. This is a poor substitute. If there's nothing else, okay. But if you can find a good church, a faithful church, a church that preaches the Bible, but doesn't try and twist and warp and contextualize and modernize, postmodern, try and alter the meaning, alter what Scripture says. Well, you can choose to, God created them male and female. Well, actually, no, we decide. Eat of the fruit. You get to decide what your gender is. Danny's, no worries, Danny. Good to have you here. Whale oil, everyone's saying greetings. Plan D is writing, good luck, mon ami. The universe is looking at you. I must go in the wind and flow. Okay. Sharunian's writing, Gordon is no mega mind. Okay. Billy Carson and Jay Morrison have a lot in common. I'm not familiar with Jay Morrison, but I'm not familiar with a lot of these characters. I didn't know Billy Carson before. Jesus 2 says, have you looked up gematria? And I will, although it sometimes takes me a while. 1775. To put it to rest. It will come about in the last days that the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the chief of the mountains. It will be raised above the hills, and the peoples will stream to it. There was Acts 5, verse 30, which says, the God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom you had killed by hanging him on a tree. And then Acts 10, verse 39, which says the same thing. Okay. Micah, the prophet Micah, doors open in Cristratia on Michael's mountain, April, if anyone is interested. Danny's writing, and he wrote my name, but you spelt it with a U. It's C-A-W, so it didn't highlight. Bible sales are up 22%, while regular book sales are up 1%. That does say a lot. The Jordan Peterson, We Who Struggle with God, I think is the name of his latest book, and all his series expounding on deeper biblical meanings, pulling back the layers of stories like the one of Jonah that I've spoken of, echoing a lot of what Dr. Peterson says. The Cain and Abel story. There's so many layers of meaning. Peterson often says that you can't get to the bottom of it. You can go deeper and deeper. And yet the culture teaches us to look at the Bible very superficially. Jesus 2 writes, he writes, tree, didn't kill him. Mel Gibson tried to portray by throwing him off a bridge, but the use of the wood from the tree to crucify him. I'm not understanding what you're writing. And Jesus 2 is saying the earth core happened to reverse last year. Well, I find it interesting, Jesus 2, that name, Jesus 2. There is only one Jesus, and to be entirely honest, and it's my channel, I'm not big on the blasphemy thing. Blasphemer! I'm not big on that. But I think there's a tendency, this is part of Billy Carson's rhetoric, is that we can be Jesus, your Christ consciousness. You can, attain a higher vibration and thus become, you are a God unto yourself. And this is dangerous. It's opposed to the message of the Bible. I was reading today a passage in Acts chapter 3, where I believe it's Peter and John have gone to the temple, and there is a man about 40 years of age who his daily habit is to be at the temple as people are coming in to worship or to make sacrifices or do the things they do, and to beg alms of them. And Peter fixed his gaze on this man, and the man perked up, thinking he was going to get something from Peter and John. He was going to get some money. He's going to get a shekel or two. And Peter said to him, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "Gold and silver I have none, but what I have I do give you. In the name of Jesus Christ, rise and walk." I should find the passage so that you can look it up yourself and verify, but it's in Acts of the Apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I keep going past Acts, and I know I'm 90% sure it's in chapter 3. Danny always enjoys the scripture. Now, Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer. This is Acts of the Apostles, chapter 3, starting right in verse 1. Now, Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. That would mean 9 hours after the sun came up. And a man, lame from birth, was being carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, the Beautiful Gate, to ask alms of those who entered the temple. Seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, he asked for alms, and Peter directed his gaze at him with John and said, "Look at us." And he fixed his attention upon them, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, "I have no silver and gold, but I give you what I have. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, walk." And he took him by the right hand and raised him up, and immediately his feet and ankles were made strong. And leaping up, he stood and walked and entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The point I'm making, or the point I wanted to make in recounting that story, is that Peter and John, in of themselves, were capable of nothing. Jesus rose that man. They did it in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, not of their own authority. And the messages of this Billy Carson and those like him is that by raising your vibration and all this stuff, that you can achieve this Christ consciousness and that you can be as a God unto yourself. But Peter, John, Paul, and John in his revelation, so often we hear the words that it is only by the power of Christ, it is only by the power of Jesus Christ of Nazareth that these miracles were performed. And I was ruminating on that a bit today. It was part of my devotional reading that I was doing with, I basically engage in two sets. I read my passage in Our Daily Bread, and then I'll sometimes read the associated passage with that. And then I'm making my way through the Bible yet again, reading it from cover to cover. And I'm in Kings now, and then I read a few chapters of whatever book I'm in. And that was something that was I was ruminating on, mulling over, praying over, is all things are possible in his name. You will say to this mountain, move, and it will move. All this and more, greater things than these. You know, there are so many passages in the Bible, but it's done in the name of Jesus Christ, the name above all names, the King of all kings. I'm going to read up. Jesus too is filling the chat. Daniel's writing, Isha 40:22 is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. I think you meant to type Isaiah. I'm going to leave all the Bible quotes because I want to talk about one other thing. I talked about the fact that I have not always been a professing Christian, that I walked away from the faith. My late teenage years, 18, 19 years of age, I rejected it, still faked it, still went to church on occasion, still liked the hymns. I've always been an extrovert, always enjoyed. Hank Holiday has showed up and said he just got in, was trading. How is everyone? Anyway, I wanted to talk about something about during my years in the wilderness, during my 20 plus years of being off the path. I rejected faith. When I was in university, I met a young girl who was very attractive. Gosh, I've told this story before in firsthand accounts, and I always remembered her name, and now all of a sudden her name has escaped me. Anyway, very attractive young girl. I was young too, and she was going to Guelph University. I was going to York, and I asked her out at a res, what we call a res party, and asked this young girl out. I'm hoping her name will come to me. I can't believe I've forgotten it. Doesn't matter. And I think she was giving me a bit of a test. And she said, how would you feel about coming to Guelph for a Bible study? And I said, sure. And this was in the wintertime. This was, I think, in the month, either January or February, but I think February. So I agreed to go to a Bible study at Guelph, which about from York, it would take about an hour or so to get there. And I drove down to Guelph University. And because it was February and that section of the 401, the highway between, as you're heading into Guelph, can get very bad. There can be snowstorms, squalls, and there was snow at the time. And so I gave myself, I didn't want to be late. Lori, that was her name. And I gave myself to make a 1 hour drive, I gave myself 3 hours to get there. And so when I got there, there was nothing, no problems. And it took me an hour to get there. So I had about 2 hours or so to kill. And what I ended up doing was I went to the bookstore. I bought a book, one of the worst books I've ever read or opened in my life. It was Margaret Atwood, and it's called Surfacing. I'd never read anything by her, and I'll never read anything by her again after reading that tripe. But I then went into a little pub called the Boo Bar, which was in the University Center, or the whatever they call it at Guelph. Their main central square is what we called it at York. And I went and found this little pub called the Boo Bar. I was drinking. I ordered just one Molson Golden, and sat there reading this book, and it was horrible, but I have to kill time. And I was sipping on the beer, and some guys came in and got very loud and were screaming and being boisterous, and they were playing bridge. And I had gone into a very small corner of the bar, away from all the other patrons. And now these guys came and they sat at the table almost right next to me. And it was like, and there was plenty of other places they could have gone. And so at one point I kind of shot them a look as if to say, you couldn't have gone somewhere else. I mean, I didn't say it, but that was, and the kind of the leader of the group, some guy who was somewhat older and very well dressed, he said, hey, you play bridge? And I said, not really, no. And he said, well, did you know you're in the bridge playing corner of the Boo Bar? And I was like, really? Yeah, the bridge corner. And then he pointed, and as it turned out, there was a wooden laminated sign, and it said bridge corner. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know. All right, fair enough. And I went to move to a quieter part of the bar, and this older guy and when I say older, kicking in around 30, as opposed to everyone else who's 18, 19, 20. He said, do you play? You said you don't really play bridge. Have you played bridge at all? And I said, yeah, I played a bit. I had a great aunt who taught me the basics. And he goes, well, come on and join us. And I said, well, all right, this book stinks. And I threw it in my pockets. All right. And then I sat down and we were just kind of introducing. And he said, what are you drinking? And I said, well, Molson Golden. And he goes, 2 Golden. And they brought them over. And I said, I said, I'm a student. I'm a little tight. I gotta be careful. And he goes, don't worry about it. And he pulled out his Visa card and it said, you see, EXP, this is expenses. I'm here on business. He said, I do this every now and again. So free booze. And I'm off the Christian path. I got wasted. I got hammered. I was bombed, blitzed, and bewildered. And I had an hour plus of drinking heavy. An hour and a half later, when it was time to go to the Bible study, I was 3 sheets to the wind, and I went anyway. And I was told by Lori she never wanted to see me again because I forget Billy Carson. I don't want to say the things that I said. I was, and here's a very non-Christian word, but it describes me perfectly in that instance. I was an asshole, complete and total, utter asshole. Sorry for the swearing. And, but young, foolish, ignorant, is what I was. Yeah, thank you for that binary. Appreciate it. And I have Danny writing that he walked away from God at 16, 17, so similar age to myself. Found Rob Skiba on YouTube during COVID, 1984, who taught flat earth and the Bible. Thus I was led back to God. Flat earth saved my soul? Danny, I'm going to challenge you on that. The flat earth didn't save your soul. Only one Savior. Jesus is the name above all names. And it doesn't matter whether this earth is flat, round, donut shaped, or whatever it is. It's God's world. Anyway, I'm trying to write or read what's being written. And binary is echoing what I said. Now, I want to tell you something. And the word binary, for just to point something out to you, binary writes, the debate is largely mute. It's not mute, M-U-T-E. Mute, M-U-T-E, means the inability to form speech. You can't talk. You're mute. The debate is moot, M-O-O-T, meaning you'll never come to the end of it. It's debatable until the end of time. And that word is moot, M-O-O-T. Common mistake. Hank is agreeing, young and dumb, took him 27 years. I've already gone on too long, and I've still got 17 people watching, but this might open. Why is a voice like Billy Carson popular? I'm going to explain, I think, why it is, from experience from my early 20s. Maybe I'll do that in the next video. I read a book. I went to the world's biggest bookstore in Toronto before the days of the internet, and I wanted books on religion. I wanted books that debunked Christianity, and I got some. And one that I got really influenced me at that young age, 20-ish, early 20s. And it was about Jesus was an insane, and that he never died on the cross, that Jesus survived the cross. And it presented compelling in my ignorant 20-year-old non-scholarly mind that the evidence was compelling. I was being given hidden knowledge that was being kept from everyone else. There's this big conspiracy, but I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And well, I shouldn't say hook, line, and sinker. I don't think I believed 100% everything that was written in the book, but in broad strokes, I certainly did. Anyway, I think I had an idea of what you were saying, Danny. Yeah, it's like when I got back onto the Christian path, what happened was I had a lot of bad things were happening in my life. My marriage was ending, my first marriage. Um, my mother was dying of cancer, and a pastor friend who I'd known, and I'd gone to his church a few times, but I wasn't back on the path. I was religious in a sense, but no relationship. And Scott came back into my life at that point, and just we connected. And he suggested, you need to start coming back to church. You need to start hearing the word again. And so I started going back to his church. And that, so I could, you say flat earth, I could say Scott saved me. But Scott pointed me back in the direction to my Lord and Savior. Flat earth was part of that ideology, or that belief pushed you back toward believing there are so many lies in this world. But the biggest hurdle in terms of trying to convince modern people that Jesus is who he says he is a lot of people have difficulty with the resurrection. The resurrection is huge. People do not believe that a body could be lying in a tomb for 3 days and that it could reanimate. They believe that lifeless matter in primordial soup, divorced from any entity, divorced from anything beyond any dimension, just a random accident. They believe that can happen. They believe in this primordial soup Darwinian theory that life came from nothing. They can believe that, but they cannot believe that Jesus, after lying in the tomb for 3 days, that he came back to life, or the story of Lazarus, who was in the tomb 4 days and came back to life. His body, they said his body's don't go in there. He's going to stink. Dead bodies decay. They stink. Think about your bowels. When we die, the body after it dies smells. And that people can understand. Bodies decay, they rot, they stink. They cannot wrap their head around the notion that a power strong enough to, a power so all-encompassing that it can create life itself, that it could reanimate something. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge in our hyper-scientific world, where everyone talks about, we revere the science. It's become the religion of scientism, and scientism has its high priests. Dr. Teresa Tam, Dr. Anthony Fauci. These are the high priests of scientism, and they will proclaim, as Anthony Fauci did, I am the science. The same way that some preachers will say, I have the keys to the kingdom. If you want to get to heaven, you got to come through me. I'll put you into relationship with Jesus, but it's only through me. It's only through my church. It's only through my cult. Jim Jones, David Koresh, countless others of this ilk, who cult of personality and scientism has this same religious element to it. And you do not want to be in relationship with Anthony Fauci.
promoter of lies. You do not want to be in relationship with Theresa Tan or health officials or scientists. You want to be in relationship with the one who created all things. Binary's writing, second lockdown, brutal breakup, diagnosis of celiac disease, and not seeing a human soul for 8 days drove me to the cross. Right from the beginning, as soon as I could find people, I wasn't afraid of COVID. I didn't dispute its existence. I falsely believed it came from a wet market, that it jumped from a bat to a human, but I wasn't concerned about it to the extent that if it's out there, I'm going to get it, and everyone's going to get it. It's out there, it's floating around, and you can't micromanage human behavior to stop a viral pathogen. Impossible. You can't close down the supply chain unless you want to invite the zombie apocalypse. So if you're going to keep the supply chain open, then you have to keep the electrical grid open. You have to keep the waterworks open. You have to keep police services open. You got to keep hospitals open. You have to keep nursing homes open. And all the people who work in them have to be going in and out and in and out. Viral spread is going to happen. Germs, bacteria, pathogens spread. We live in a crazy, world. And the idea that, well, we'll have, everyone who doesn't work in these 270, it was nearly 300 industries in Ontario that were determined to be essential. And as long as you don't work in one of these 300-ish industry groups, you stay home. These people working in these 300 industry groups, like all those ones I just mentioned and more, if you were working at Amazon's essential. People have to be able to order things online. So their fulfillment centers had armies of workers going in and out all the time. Many of them are smokers. Hand them out, touch, hand them out, touch. Common touch surfaces everywhere. And Amazon did have outbreaks. They had hundreds of cases at their Toronto fulfillment centers, but they never shut them down. But if a nail salon had one case, they'd close it down. Binary writes, Ray, comfort videos are great, breaking down how much more difficult it is to believe in Darwinism theory of evolution versus our creator God. Hank writes, they don't know about NDA witnessed by doctors, near-death experiences. I think for a lot of people, it takes a road to Damascus moment. It has to happen to them themselves personally in order for them to, some people, I think, the secondhand accounts, even from trusted individuals, aren't good enough. It has to happen to them personally, as it happened to Paul as he was going to Damascus and he met Jesus. Jeff writes, I've seen a lot of death while I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. So, fellow veteran, are you Canadian, Jeff, or American? I'm Canadian. I was in the Canadian Armed Forces. I just left in 2021. I never saw active duty, though. I was never in theater. The closest I came was going to Wainwright, which is a training base up in northern Alberta, when the Vandus, the 22nd Regiment out of Quebec, was doing workup training. It was called Operation Maple Resolve, and we were doing workup training where I was part of the workup training for them going to Afghanistan. That was in 2011, if memory serves. And theirs was the last deployment to Afghanistan of Canadian Armed Forces. I think if memory serves, it was 6-month deployments that often got extended. And we had 3, it was the Royal Canadian Regiment, the 22nd Regiment, and the PPCLI, Princess Patricia's Light Infantry. Those were the 3 units going, and those attached to them. Hank, Jeff, Danny writes that Neil deGrasse Tyson, not a typo, good, okay, gotcha, pushes scientism, also the star kind. I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson, smart guy. Yeah, and this is one of the things. I think there's a tendency to straw man and to try and denigrate those with whom people disagree. I don't think that's a good way to go about things. Neil deGrasse Tyson is a very intelligent man. I think there's a spirit at work in the world, and it affected Billy Carson, and it affected Joel Osteen, and it's affected countless others. Dawkins. There's a force in this world that wants to get the world, the broader world, to deny Jesus Christ and to ridicule, belittle anyone who does. It's bullying in a lot of cases. So I'm just reading up the last thing. I've got Danny writing. Yeah, I got you. Neil Disgrace Tyson. I got you. Binary. Jeff is an MP. Okay. U.S. military, U.S. Army military police. Very good. A lot of guys in Canada. I went through basic with a number of guys who were going into become MPs, and a lot of them were thinking about what, after doing their, I don't know how long their commitment was. I would imagine it was 4 years, but then going into the RCMP or a provincial police force afterwards, fully trained, moving up the pay scale and such, and having gotten to see the world. I was in the communications branch. I was what we call Royal Canadian Corps Signals. And then later they changed it at some point and they called it ACIS, which was Army Communication Information System Specialist, which I find is so military. We love sticking tech and specialist and name, we love these fancy titles. And really, I would tell people at the end of the day, I'm a rad op, radio operator. But that's our world. I'm just going to read the last couple. Hank Holiday is, I was 5 and came back, had a TBI, was dead for 4 minutes, saw my dead grandmother, and that's why I know there is an afterlife. True story. Had a TBI. Don't know what TBI is. TBI is. And that's amazing. Yeah. Now, the one thing is, I know, Hank, you came onto the station when I was talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to leave that alone for now because I don't sit in the throne. I don't sit in the seat of judgment. And I know total brain injury. Thank you, Binary. Sure, and you writes that I got opted out for not wanting to infuse chemicals into my body. Oh, Jeff is writing traumatic brain injury. Okay. I wasn't familiar with the acronym, and I worked with a medical unit in the Army. I was with a field ambulance unit in Valcartier, Quebec. But then they would have, while I was there, it was all French, and I would have been given the acronym en français, Colin de Bien. Anyway, listen, thank you all for watching. I'm going to share my experience in my next video talking about this theory that I fell for, that Jesus wasn't insane and survived the cross. And I believed this back when I was in my 20s. This was before the internet, where I wasn't going to go to Robarts Library at the University of Toronto or one of these big, I wasn't going to go back up to York to the Ross Building, to the library there. I wasn't going to go and investigate. The internet wasn't around to, there's so much material out there that you can investigate anything from reliable, verifiable sources now. But back then, if you wanted to, you'd have to go to a university college research library and look at microfiche and things like that, and who's got the time or the inclination to do that. You just want to know the truth. You want a shortcut. And so you read a quick little book and you think you've been informed. And what's really happened is you have been led seriously astray. And Binary is saying, looking forward to the next topic tomorrow night, ETA. I'm going to aim to do, I never make any promises because life happens, but I should be able to do it tomorrow in around 9:30. In around 9:30. I'll throw that out there now. I'm going to check out, well, a long time ago, someone put up a message about gematria. I'm just going to look at that, 1775. I think I have no idea. But anyway, and everyone who's here stayed till the end, an hour and 30 minutes long almost. I really appreciate it. I know this is windy. This is what I do. Another topic I want to talk about is what's going on in Syria and the power vacuum that exists within that country and what we might see happen. Geopolitics, that's what I studied at one of the things I studied at university. Humanities and political science, humanities, literature, basically. And so what's going to happen in Syria? I don't have a crystal ball. I can just see a number of different possibilities. And one of them I see is the potential for a multi-headed conflict, a conflict that could involve the Lebanese, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Israelis, goodness knows, certainly Turkey. We've got a power vacuum. And are we going to see, we have this HTS, which that name, HTS, means Organization for the Liberation of the Levant. And the Levant includes, so if they want to liberate the Levant, they got a lot of work to do because they also have to liberate Israel, Jordan, and maybe parts of Turkey and Egypt as well. The Levant is a bigger region than just Syria. So, and they're going to liberate you whether you want it or not, maybe. So, God bless. And as I always like to end my videos, receive these words, not mine. I take them from Scripture, from the book of Acts, but I ask you to receive them. And when I'm in church and these words are spoken, I put my hands out and bring it on. A representation of what I want to be open to these words. And so I open my hands wide and the words are, may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord God, creator of all things, that which exists outside of time, space, and matter, may the Lord grant you peace. So we'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Whale oil's lucky he didn't have to, I started this one very late tonight. But for whale oil on the west coast of Canada, British Columbia, it's 3 hours earlier. It's only 9:43 here. It's coming up on 1 a.m. God bless everyone. We'll talk to you very soon. And appreciate everyone. Oh, if you haven't subscribed yet and you're still watching and you're not a subscriber, I think I'm at 1,099, an annoying number. So if I get one more, I get a little more, that endorphin, dopamine rush in the brain. If you want to do it, great. Anyway, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.